My name is Lee Finna. I'm the Director for Education at the Washington Policy Center. And this morning we have some fantastic speakers that have agreed to come and explain to you what is happening with Initiative 1240. We have the Superintendent of Spokane Public Schools, Shelly Redinger, who is the first, Shelly is a leader who has now moved that district to become the first district in Washington State that will be opening charter schools. We're very happy to have her. And we also have Cindi Williams, who is a member of the Washington State Charter School Commission, which will be implementing the charter school initiative. So please come to the podium, and I will tell you what the Center for Public Education is doing this next. I'll just give you a very brief overview of our work at Washington Policy Center, and then I'll introduce our speakers. So the first thing I wanted to tell you is that today we are releasing a new study called A Review of Digital Learning in Private and Public Charter Schools, and there's a 2-page summary of that in your packets. And I hope you'll have an opportunity to read the descriptions in that 2-page summary of the cutting-edge charter schools in other states and how they're using computer programs to help teachers teach students and to customize the education of every student, which is a dramatic change from the way we educate our students today. That policy note describes a number of charter schools that we're hoping similar ones will open here in Washington State. One of the projects of the Center for Education in the coming year is the Initiative 1240 follow-up project. If you go to our website and sign up to follow our education blog, there I am writing a number of blog posts frequently about the implementation of the charter school process, and there you will find that there are 31 schools that have now applied to in hopes of winning a charter school license to open in the fall of 2014. This is astounding. There are only 8 spots available. There'll be 40 available over the next 5 years, but 31 groups are working very hard right now to put in their charter school application by the deadline of November 22nd. You're going to hear more about that. I will also be writing about the $1.56 billion in extra revenue that the state has provided schools in response to the McCleary decision, and I'm going to be following the developments of the upcoming legislative session. So now we're going to move right to our speakers. We're going to have a great question and answer system after, as we did before, and you'll be able to ask our panelists the questions you have about charter school implementation. Now, we're going to start with Cindi Williams. We are very fortunate to have Cindi Williams with us this morning. Cindi is one of the 9 members, as I told you, of the Charter School Commission. She's responsible for implementing the will of the voters. She also serves as a principal at HCM Strategists, a leading DC-based education and health public policy firm. Cindi joined HCM last year after having spent 4 years on the U.S. leadership team at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as the director for U.S. communications across its domestic portfolio. Prior to joining the Gates Foundation, Williams worked in a variety of policy and communications roles, serving as senior advisor to the U.S. Secretary of Education, where she focused on reauthorization of the No Child Left Behind Act. Now I'll tell you briefly about Shelly, our superintendent. Dr. Shelly Redinger is the new superintendent of Spokane Public Schools. She led Spokane Public Schools in becoming the first district in the state to apply for and win authority from the state to become a charter school authorizer. That is so cool. We have 295 districts. She is a leader in our state. She is here to tell us how Spokane Public Schools responded when voters passed this charter school initiative last year. She was previously the superintendent for Spotsylvania County Schools in Fredericksburg, Virginia, a district of 23,000 students. Prior to that, Dr. Redinger's positions included superintendent of Oregon Trail School District in Sandy, Oregon, and administrator, principalships, and/or teaching assignments in South Carolina and the Tri-Cities area. I'm so proud to have these wonderful women here to talk to you today. We'll start with Cindi.
Good morning. How is everybody? So how many here have been to a charter school? Has anybody actually been to a charter school? A couple. So we're going to take a little pop quiz since we're talking about education today. So do you believe charters are public schools? Raise your hands. Private schools? You're actually already way smarter than the rest of the public. Good job. Do you think they're selective? Or do you think they take any kid that walks through the door? Smart group. So do you think they are free, or that there's some sort of fee that can be charged for going to this new school? Free? Raise your hands. Any sort of fees associated with the new schools? So our biggest challenge in Washington State is that we don't know what they are. We just did a new poll to find out that literally, even though there have been 4 initiatives on the ballot and lots of hard work by lots of people, there's still this huge mystery around charter schools. And so I just want to, for the record, say that the biggest thing that I'd like to ask for your help for today is just helping the public as leaders in your communities understand what it is we're about. They are free schools. They are independent schools, so they have autonomy and flexibility outside of the larger system. They literally they have the same rules and regulations, particularly around academics, as any other school in the state. They just have a different set of flexibilities around in which to operate. But literally, it's an open lottery system, and any student who walks through that door, whether they're ELL or special education, there's a real commitment and a desire and a responsibility to educate that student. And so really what we want them to know is charter schools are public schools. They're just independent public schools with a different set of rules that allow you to innovate and be more flexible. And you're outside of a charter, outside of a union contract, which gives you the ability to have extended days. It allows you to try out new curriculum. It allows you to be more nimble because you're not moving an entire bureaucracy, but you're moving one school with one mission, creating one culture. What Shelly is trying to do is so much harder. There aren't even words for how hard it is to move the entire system. But you can have a vision and a mission for an individual school that is much easier to execute at this smaller scale. And then the hope is that they have porous walls. That as you use these high-performing charters as learning labs, that these best practices that you see inside the charter become great opportunities for the larger district to learn and to steal. And so the hope is, and as this charter movement, which is now 20 years old, has grown up, what we're starting to see is sort of the next generation of charters. This is one instance where it is great to be a laggard. As one of the last states in the country that's come into the charter movement, we have this enormous wealth of learning that we get to, as commissioners and as leaders, tap into. So we have put together a great group of advisors nationally that are really helping us see, here's where we have totally failed. This is the road you don't want to go down. Here's where we've had huge success. And so we're able really to handpick opportunities, not charters, but handpick focus areas and things where we feel like there's real evidence there now after 2 decades of learning, so that we're not having to try these things out for the first time in Washington State. And so right now, sort of the next generation of charters is charter district compacts. And so that's where states like Colorado and Florida and Texas are, that have been in this space for 20 years, is the walls are totally porous now. And so they're sharing facilities and doing all sorts of cool stuff that we get to watch as we begin from scratch this effort here in Washington State. So I'll just start with, to have been in a charter, I think, is to believe in a charter. If you've experienced a high-performing charter school, if you have driven by a school where there are mags in Camden and people are literally going through just like it's the airport in order to go into their classroom to make sure there are no guns. If you drive by that school where you know that the success rate can be as low as 4%, to the school next door, which is a charter school, and you see the exact same students and an almost 100% success rate, you've seen the magic of a charter. So I encourage you, there are high-performing charters in Oregon, there are high-performing charters in Idaho, and we are about to have high-performing charters here in Washington State. But I really would encourage you at some point to go see it, because it is, at its best, It's a culture of high expectations for every kid with a 100% success rate or a 97% success rate, and we're seeing that across the country in these more mature systems. And what it proves is that all kids can learn. That given the right learning environment, literally all kids can learn. And so that was a long way of saying that this 9-person commission that was appointed, 3 from the governor, 3 from the House, and 3 from the Senate, has this huge privilege and giant responsibility to choose out of 28 applications somewhere between 5 and 8, hopefully, that will be able to serve the students of Washington State. Right now, the preference is at the beginning to really serve those communities where parents feel trapped in an underperforming system. So we will be, as a commission, really focused on, are you serving a low-income community that currently doesn't have options, where they feel like the school that they have to go to based on their zip code is not at all meeting their expectations. And so as we look at these applications, that will be, next to quality, probably our biggest focus area. We have 28 applications, as Leif said, and we have them really based in Tacoma, Seattle, Yakima Valley, and then Shelly is in charge of Spokane. And so we have worked really hard. You've gotten your money's worth, for sure, because we just got our first staff person, and we've been around since March. So we've created our own rules, which has been just a fantastic learning experience and hard. And recently went out with our RFP, and that's a situation where, with the National Association of Charter Schools and with all of the leaders across the country, we really had an opportunity to listen and learn. This is one of the most rigorous requests for application on planet Earth. I mean, we have not made this easy, and anybody who's doing this work will tell you we have not made this easy. It is a huge responsibility, and these schools have to be great. And so we've asked them to think through every component part of the school, things that Shelly does all day long, but are new for a lot of these innovators. So it's everything from your philosophy on school discipline, your philosophy on curriculum, your school day and how you want to sequence that, your board and governance, your finance system. It's humbling to think about how hard this work is and how many people want to take it on. And that's the exciting piece, is that so many people, after seeing the application, eyes wide open, still got in the first year. And so, so the application is out. The letters of intent have been received. They've got another month to fill out their application. And then we have a group of national and local peer reviewers who are going to, with their years of experience, with a fine-tooth comb, go through these applications. They'll join with us in the process of evaluating. We have an in-person interview, so we get to look the applicants in the eye and really have a conversation. And we also have public forums. So the commission will be coming to the communities that have the opportunity to have a charter to really hear from them. Is the community support there? Are the students and the parents that we're trying to serve excited about this opportunity? There are almost 1 million kids in the United States on a waiting list to get in a charter. So something's working, but we have to create the kind of charters that create those kind of waiting lists. And so we need to know if the community is behind them. And so there are lots and lots of opportunities to serve on boards and as consultants and as community leaders to these new entrepreneurial endeavors coming to these communities. And hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about some of those.
Fantastic. That's terrific. Thank you very much, Cindi. And now Shelly, Dr. Redinger. Oh, gosh.
I would use my teacher voice. I could have projected. I have to say, I'm so excited to be back in the Tri-Cities. My husband and I, after we graduated from Washington State University, this is where we started our first jobs. He worked for Siemens Nuclear Power, and I worked for Richland and was a teacher at Jefferson Elementary. So all of you Jefferson, Richland people out there, I want to say hello. It's really exciting to be able to be a part of charter schools. A lot of people asked me, are you crazy? Why are you going out ahead of this? All my peers, other superintendents. And what I said, well, I think you're crazy not to. Fortunately, I had experiences in Oregon. A similar law passed in Oregon when I was superintendent in Oregon Trail School District. And I was able to learn from that experience what we needed to do. And that's why for our district, we knew this is what we needed to do. And I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. First of all, what I saw with neighboring districts that did not become charter school authorizers in Oregon, is it really was not good for the community. It really kind of tore the community apart, and they weren't working together for all of their students. And so in Oregon Trail School District, we put in an application for an international baccalaureate elementary school. And of course, we made sure what our community wanted first. So we polled the community, and that is what they had told us. And there weren't any at that time in the state of Oregon. And we asked them which languages they wanted the students to learn, and they wanted Mandarin and Chinese. So we thought, well, this will be no small feat to be able to get all this together. But fortunately, because we were close to Portland, we were able to recruit a teacher. Well, now fast forwarding, if you look online at that school, it is one of the highest performing schools in the state of Oregon now. And it really rose the bar for that entire district. This was a district that was pretty battered and bruised when I got there. They had had the second largest teacher strike in the state of Oregon. The community was at war. It was a terrible situation. We were able to build a brand new high school, bring in charter schools, and it's really turned that community around. I remember when I told our elementary teachers we were going to start another elementary school, a charter school, one of my lowest performing elementary schools said, well, Shelly, but we're going to lose all of our high-performing students. And I looked at them and I said, why do you think that is? And what are you going to do about it? And what they did do is they raised the bar for their students. And now all of those students are performing exceptionally well in Oregon. So I'm very proud of that. Actually, I've had people come up to me and say, Shelly, did you know that the charter school is one of the highest performing? And again, we're very, very proud of that. If you look at the research on charter schools, most of the highest performing schools in the nation are charter schools. Now, of course, they fall in the bell curve, just like most schools, where you have some that aren't performing real well. And that's the beauty of, like Cindi said, is we can learn from all of these other states on what not to do. California is a good example of some things, what not to do. I know you're agreeing as well. They're still struggling. Colorado has some great things going on. New Orleans, Texas. Actually, a team from our district in Spokane has gone to Texas a couple of times. We're learning a lot from Spring Branch, Texas, and some other districts in Texas that are doing some amazing things. So again, in Washington as well, since I was born in Washington, actually born in Spokane, I'm a Washingtonian through and through. It was really good that I got out and was able to see other states and lived in other states, because what I have a passion for is we are behind in Washington State. And I feel very passionate about that, and that we need to work hard to make sure that our students can compete. There should be a huge concern when University of Washington, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a Cougar though too, I want to clarify, but it's a shame when the University of Washington is filled with students that are not from Washington State. And that's because we need to raise our bar for our students so they can compete and get those slots in the University of Washington. When I lived in South Carolina, Clemson was filled with South Carolinians, UVA is filled with Virginians. And so we have a real issue here in Spokane. We are not educating our students so they can compete with other states. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about it. When we looked at our district, we had two regions of our city that are really underperforming. And there is a lot of poverty in Spokane, especially in the core where I'm superintendent, but two areas in particular are northeast and northwest sections. So those are two areas we're really targeting to make sure that the students and parents have other options. Oftentimes they are not able to drive their children, and so it really it's up to us to make sure that we provide those different schools in their attendance zones. Also, we did a strategic plan. We surveyed our community, and almost number one was making sure that we offer additional options, particularly at the high school level. We have some really great high schools, some that make the top charts in Newsweek. For example, Lewis and Clark High School does extremely well. North Central, we have a science program now that is getting worldwide recognition, but we don't want to stop there, and it's really our underperforming students that we're leaving behind, and so that is our big target area. So we're looking at other options in the STEM areas as well as the arts, and also some other blended learning, which is computerized instruction as well as the traditional learning that goes along with that. Also, we have a very strong Montessori program, and we're looking to expand that as well. So we've just become a portfolio district, which means that we offer more than one option. So charters is a part of your portfolio. It's similar to Denver Public Schools, a model they've adopted, as well as other options for parents. There was a study done of what great minds have in common, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and what they found, there were some other names as well, is that many of them had had Montessori training. So we're hoping to have the next Bill Gates out of Spokane.
Yes.
But just to make sure that we offer a lot of options, different opportunities for our students. I know Richland has some strong Montessori programs, but it would be nice if those were tied more closely to the public system rather than private. Just some last things that we're really focusing on in Spokane Public Schools overall, and charter's a big piece of this, is innovations in curriculum. We're looking at core knowledge. New York is really focusing on core knowledge, so we're looking at that as an option. We're currently piloting the program in a number of our schools. The Cambridge AP Capstone program, College Board has selected us. Each of our 5 high schools is piloting that. So again, we have some other things going on as well. And then IB, one of the authorized or individuals, charter schools that applied to us would like to start an IB as well. And then we're also looking at dual language programs, blended learning, and project-based learning. Something that's been very exciting for my leadership team, because I believe very strongly in talent development at all levels, is this has given us the opportunity to work with charter management organizations, CMOs, and the level of change that they're helping bring to our district is amazing, because you can't do this work alone. So working with the National Association of Charter Management Organizations, CMOs, this is really helping us. They're actually coming to Spokane to work with us. There's a company called Pivot that helps with leadership development and executive coaching at all levels, because you have to lead this change, and it's no easy work, as we've Cindi has talked about. I've had my senior leadership team has told me they have never worked this hard. They're having the best time of their lives, but they've never worked this hard. And that's my chief academic officer, human resources officer, chief financial officer. I believe strongly they all need to be part of this vision as we move forward, because your finance team plays a critical role in implementing charters. Just some couple last things, and we can go to questions. We are evaluating the applications on 4 major areas: educational program design, and then capacity, because that is very, very important to be successful. The main area is usually facilities, and so school districts that can be a helpful partner help make charter schools successful. Operations plans, and again, capacity, a financial plan, and then that they are experienced operators is something that we are looking for in Spokane Public Schools. The 3 that have applied, we have a group called iLead, the Academy of Arts and Sciences, and then a Pride Prep school are the 3 so far that have applied. It's really difficult. A lot of them are looking to start up on the west side and then expand to the east side after they have established their finances, et cetera. Because again, you don't want these to fail. They have to really get established. Green Dot, a group that we've met with a number of times, they really like Spokane, but to get started, Green Dot has to have at least 5 sites. And that's, they're worried about you can get too many in one spot too, and that can cause an issue. So they're looking probably to start on the west side, and then we would have satellites on the east side. And so that is a little bit that we're dealing with in terms of location. So that's just a little bit about why we jumped in and where we're heading, and I guess we'll have questions.
That's fantastic. Okay. I'm going to intervene here and ask the superintendent to describe Green Dot Charter Schools and what they do. Oh, sure. Why it is that they're one of the 31 charter school applicants, and a lot of people don't know what they do.
Yeah. They're not applying to us right now, so I can talk about them. We have to be real careful, so we...
excuse me, that's right. They're not applying to you, they're applying to the state.
Yeah, so that's why I can talk about it. Cindi and I were saying. Green Dot started out in the California system, and they have a great story for all of us to learn from. They were at war with Los Angeles public schools for years, and now they're trying to work together. And again, we don't want to repeat all of that they went through. Green Dot specializes in conversion schools, as well as startups, but mainly at the secondary level. Middle school is their specialty as well. And in terms of really raising the bar, increasing achievement for minority students, and usually students that have really struggled. And they have excellent results in terms of conversion schools, turnaround schools, and that is their specialty.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to questions from the audience. Allison, there's a gentleman right there in the middle.
Hi, I'm going to try to sneak in 2 questions. The first one is real quick, can a charter school go year-round? And then the second question is, say for a high school charter school, instead of athletics as we think of it, do those types of schools focus on all the students and just kind of go for having, say, a workout center? Relates to the healthcare issue we just talked about, rather than having athletic teams have a good workout center so all the kids get to work out at the gym every day, and if they want to play school sports, they can go maybe to Ferris or wherever and play on a team there.
Do you want me to start? Okay. I'll start, and then Cindi can jump in. There are many, some of the success of the charter schools, there are many that do go year-round, and I know as I've been having some conversations with our own State Board of Education, they'd love to do more of that here. We're hoping to be part of that pilot at Rogers High School. But you're right, it can be an option to go year-round. They do have more freedom in terms of being able to establish hours and length of year. And that's one of the exciting things about charter schools. Many of you might know this when I talk about Washington being so far behind. When I was in Virginia, my school district had 2 extra weeks of school compared to Washington, and 30 minutes longer day. So you add that all together, that's very, very significant. In some districts in Texas, they have 4 additional weeks more than we have in Washington. So we have an extremely short year. So that is a big part of what charter schools look at. In terms of athletics, that could be a part of it, that physical activity, because the days are always longer, usually. That's a piece that's built in. And then, like you said, they usually coordinate with the local school district for if you have a really strong football player, let's say, that wants to play for Shadle. I just had to put that little in there. But then they can have that opportunity.
Thank you. That's great. There's a gentleman right behind the gentleman that was there, Allison. Right there.
Hi, I've got a 2-part question. I'll try to tailor one for each of you. I just recently returned from a national conference for community colleges, and my question is kind of it wants to come up. I want you to come up a level. For you, Dr. Redinger, do you have clear education goals for your district? And what I mean by that is there's essentially 2 routes students can go. Maybe there's a third, I just can't think of it. One is to college or to a trade. Do you have clear education goals around that for your students that graduate out of your district? And then for you, Ms. Williams, do you ask that as part of the charter school process to make sure these districts do have some clear education goals that are broadly communicated to their constituents?
Good question. Go ahead.
One of the attributes of a charter school is a lot of time they do say they want to have a college-ready transcript. However, that is something that all of us are trying to do in education as well. Now, we just updated our strategic plan in Spokane, and we have a new goal. It's our big, bold goal is what we call it. So if you go on our website, you can read all about it, but it's called T24. It's a strategy we learned when we were in Texas, and we tailored it and customized it to fit Spokane. But T24, because what happens a lot of times is it's there is a need for students to be able to get a trade. Like, for example, Vista in Spokane needs linesmen. They said they started almost at $100,000 a year, and no one's trained to be a linesman. So we're not wanting to eliminate that. Plumbers, electricians are still a strong need, but yet they need to be really trained, not just one class. And so we're updating our skills center. We just received $11 million, so thank you to the state legislators, to update our skills center. And I know you have the Tri-Tech Skills Center here in the Tri-Cities that does really well. But part of that piece is the T24. T stands for technical, so that we have a pathway that's very rigorous for technical education, and then 2-year, and then a 4-year. And we are working with Spokane Community Colleges, Spokane Falls Community College, to really beef up that relationship for our 2-year. So our goal is we're moving the finish line. It's not high school graduation and just eking students across that line, but actually we're going to judge our success by T24, how many students actually complete We have a real problem in Eastern Washington with educational attainment. We're much lower than our West Side counterparts in terms of educational attainment. And so that's really our target, is not just high school graduation, but that there's actually completion of technical 2-year or 4-year.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
So probably the best example of what you're talking about, which is really raising the bar and the expectations, is Yes Prep in Houston. So they've been around now for a while. They've got a 100% graduation rate from their high school. But what is really, I think, innovative about them is they're now tracking those students through their college experience and saying that's whether or not we're successful. So in the Houston School District, you have about a 10% college graduation rate. For this student population that they serve. Right now, they're at about 72. So for them, that's not good enough at all. But for 72% in this student population is actually extraordinary. And so there are models out there like Yes and KIP who, because they're so mature in their growth, really have now said the definition of our success as a charter management organization is whether or not our students graduate. And for them, a 4-year degree is the goal, because they're trying not to make decisions for those students as to what their opportunities will be. If they choose to go to a community college for 2 and get a certificate, that's great. If they choose to go for 2 and then to 4, that's great. But they're making the bar 4 years. And so as we look at these applications, you know, there's nothing monolithic about charters, which is part of the cool thing, right? We're supposed to be innovating. Everybody's supposed to have a unique mission and goal. But as authorizers, rigor, high and clear expectations around academics will certainly be the focus for us as we decide who gets the privilege of having a charter.
And a part of that answer is that the charter school law, maybe you'd explain that, Cindi, requires the authorizers to provide continuing oversight over the performance of the charter school. So if they are not making the goals that they have promised to meet as part of their charter contract, then they can have their charter revoked if they're not performing. So that's a brand new accountability feature that is only a charter school. Only charter schools have this requirement to meet goals. Traditional schools don't have that.
Right, which is why this process on the front end is so huge, because you really don't want to hand a charter to somebody who isn't prepared. It is so much responsibility, as Shelly knows more than any of us. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to revoke a charter because you've not fulfilled your moral compact with these students who have left a low-performing school with the expectation of going to a much higher-performing school. And so it's very disruptive for the families. And so the goal is quality at all costs. And so if you didn't actually hand a charter to all 8 because all 8 weren't ready this year, then you have another application process that starts in April, and we can go up to 40. But the goal is for them to be ready so that we don't end up revoking. But revoking is a very real option, and it is, I think, a unique level of accountability that you get to annually decide if they're meeting the expectations of the community and of their contract. And so we will actually have a contract with each of these charters that says, here are your goals, here are your objectives, here's your measurable outcomes that we will actually look at annually. And hopefully we will not be revoking charters, but you know, certainly we have to go into this with the expectation that if it's necessary, we will.
Excellent. Okay, sir, here, right, the fellow with a red tie. All right. That's you.
Dr. Redinger, you referenced the district that somebody in the district made the comment, well, you're going to pull out all of our high-performing students, and what would that do to the rest? And then you referenced raising the bar. So if I understand, and I hope I get the answer that I'm hoping for, obviously, but you said charter schools have been around for 20 years, they're new here. And so if you look, it doesn't surprise me that charter schools perform as highly as they do, primarily or partially because of the self-selection of the students and families that attend. But can we look at the states that have been in the charter system for 10, 15, 20 years and quantify across the board, not just at the charter schools, but across the board, improvements in test scores, graduation rates, or something else, so we can look at not just that self-selected group of students, but the entire group of students in those states that adopted charters long before we did?
I think the two states that I would say are the best example would be Colorado and Texas. Now, Texas has an extremely diverse population, and that's why they're really good to look at. Colorado would also be another one. What I think is hard about comparing state to state, rather than just looking at that state, is each law is very different. For example, in Washington, a big part of the law here in Washington State is that we must serve at-risk students. So to be approved and to follow the spirit of the law and the guidelines of the law, that's not always the case in other states. So you have to be careful about looking at that. Also, transportation is oftentimes not provided, and that also can really skew data. So it's usually by lottery, and that's been my experience in most states. However, I know in Oregon, my school district was 425 square miles. It was a very large district. It went all the way up to government camp in Mount Hood, and so I wanted to make sure all of our students had opportunities. So we actually provided transportation, and so our population was very indicative and representative of the rest of the school district. It wasn't just kind of a cream of the crop group, and that's what you're finding more and more is Pride Prep. Green Dot, KIP, they're really targeting at-risk students and really increasing the bar for those students. And then parents are looking to see, well, who's doing well, and many are really wanting, that's why there's the waiting list for charter schools. And so my personal experience was it really raised the bar for Oregon Trail School District. I anticipate it will do the same. We have seen a little bit of that already in Spokane as we're talking about more options and choices. Principals are really looking at their data and wanting to do more innovative things. And really, too, it's leadership saying, we want you to do innovative things, and really trying to help principals take the bull by the horns. Our teachers union also approached me and said they want to continue to do more innovative things in the district. So it's really changing the conversation for us a great deal in Spokane. But again, I think Colorado and New Orleans would be another one that's really raised the bar for that entire state. They were really struggling before the hurricane, and really has changed that. The achievement is outstanding right now in New Orleans.
Meredith.
On one hand, and I'm going to throw a little bomb here, I think we think too small. Sometimes I feel like the discussion around public education and the stakeholders are the citizens who pay for it, wanting a well-informed citizenry so they can take their place as citizens in this country. Not just a four-year degree, but also as a job so that they can have a life and be independent, raise a family, whatever their particular goals are. Having said that, are we looking at other countries? And one of the ladies touched on the fact of the states, they gave as an example for Bill's question, having a more diverse population. South Korea, Finland, the country I'm originally from, Canada, are kicking our butts in education. So let's get outside this country and look at what they're doing right, and let's not do what they're doing wrong. The other question, and for the lady from the Gates Foundation, given that Bill Gates is a product of Lakeside School, some public school before then, had the heartbreak of dealing with, didn't get to have a college degree, which I'm sure breaks his heart and really kept him back. At the risk of being completely disingenuous, I mean, he is obviously the outlier to the max. And he came from a family, obviously, that prizes education. Why don't we deliver education electronically? It could be customized to the student, at risk or not, diverse or not, poor or not. Even in this country, I think we have more young people in front of screens, whether it's an iPhone or a public library computer. The learning, the testing can be adapted to them. They don't have to be. I would suggest that our public education model is broken profoundly. And I think we're fiddling around the edges, talking again about the upholstery on the deck chairs on the Titanic, and our kids are getting dumber. And yet we're paying more as they get dumber.
Okay, and then I'll go after you.
So I'll just speak not as a commissioner, but as a former Gates member of the Gates leadership team. So, and certainly Bill has not suffered for his lack of degree. He has approached philanthropy with a very evidence-based data-driven approach that says for him the most critical issue with the success of America as we know it is education, right? So in the U.S., his biggest investment is in rethinking education. And so for him, this idea of delivering in a very populous way really high-quality materials via technology is huge. And so that has been a major investment for him. What is making that possible at scale now is the Common Core standards. So now that we have standards that are similar across 47 states, you have entrepreneurs across the country, some of the best and brightest, getting in and creating new curriculum, new hybrid models of technology that can be used in something like a rocket ship in California, where you have a school now that has the room set up in modules so that the teacher's doing one-on-one while the students are with an avatar doing very specialized learning, and then they're reading over here something that's been differentiated just for them, that's an at their level reading course. And then at the end of every day, all the results from their day's learning are rolled up into a data sheet for the teacher. And then they know what the gaps in learning are, and then they start over tomorrow. And so I think the biggest thing we're learning from technology, which is still very much being experimented with, and charters are on the cutting edge of that because it's easier to sort of course correct quickly what is and isn't working, is the ability to have immediate feedback in the classroom for teachers. So they can know every day where their students are. They're not waiting for a standardized test, but that the feedback loop is embedded in the actual curriculum because the students are online. And the learning never stops because you can take it home. And so there is literally a whole marketplace right now of materials available in the last 2 and 3 years that have never existed before. I think where we have to be careful is not to chase a new shiny bauble, but to make sure that that technology is getting real results for kids who are not necessarily used to being self-initiated, right? And so for the closing of the achievement gap and for really raising the bar and raising expectations for our at-risk student population, we know for a fact that there needs to be that teacher there to guide and push and prod and help and provide the moral support. So the technology alone for the population that we're trying to serve isn't a panacea. But in combination, the differentiated learning is showing crazy promise. And I would encourage you to look at something like Rocket Ship, which is probably our highest performing technology model right now.
Oops, excuse me, discretion. Just wanted to echo that you're going to, I call it blended learning, but you're going to continue to see more and more of that, the technology in the schools. We have a, if any of you would like to see it, if you want to talk more with me afterwards, but we have a very strong virtual learning program in Spokane. It's called Spokane Virtual Learning. We actually contract out with a number of districts on the west side, and it has, in terms of, we've had it evaluated, in terms of, if you look at rigor as well as completion rates, we have one of the highest in the entire nation of completion rates given the rigor of Spokane Virtual Learning for students. And so we're very proud of that. So students can take a number of courses online to augment their learning, and we're really seeing good results from that. With other countries, I did want to point out that we're doing a lot of study of that right now in terms of other countries. We're a Japanese partner city in Spokane, so we have a number of Japanese exchange students that come through Spokane that I get to meet with, and their superintendent. And one of the big things, the two discerning factors we're seeing really distinguishing tend to be time again. I think we have a huge issue in America with time. We do not have students attending school at all close to what our competing countries around the world have. So time is a huge issue. The other is just the whole idea of discipline with homework. Again, I am a huge proponent of homework, and we tend to not send homework or have students do their work once they get home from school as well, and that also is a huge distinguishing factor with other countries. I was meeting with some Japanese students the other day, and they were telling me, they were asking me questions, and I was asking them questions, and what happens, they couldn't believe that we have substitutes and the number of substitutes, and so that was really good for me to hear that concern coming from children. And they also said when their teacher is ill in Japan, and there's no adult, the students still come in, the work's all there, and they just work without the adult in the room because they realize they will be held accountable for that work. It's like, wow, that's a different, that would be really nice. if our students were at that point where they just knew what to do and knew they were accountable for that work, whether or not the teacher was there. I do think, too, that in public education in America, we're really content void right now. We went through the pendulum swings in education. Now that I've been at 20-plus years, I've been able to really see it swing. And we're really trying to get that with the core knowledge and with what we're adopting in Spokane Public Schools. We've not had science and social studies, and the other countries have really surpassed us in science and social studies content. We've really been hung up on process, and that's okay, but if the kids, they can't process anything if they don't even know what an atom is. They can't apply their learning if they have no clue what photosynthesis really is. And so we've really are really behind in terms of content. And I think that we've really seen that with the other countries. And it's a shame at a time when we have more content at our fingertips than ever before, the students are actually getting less and less content. And just lastly, I would say basics. Students do need to know their multiplication tables. They need to know how to write. And there's a lot of learning that goes on, and they can, again, be quicker if they know those things just like this real quickly. So those are just, I could go on and on, but there are a lot of things that are issues that we have in American public education.
I think the point about Canada is really apt as well. Canada makes many choices available to parents, so it's more parent and child-centered than our public school system here, which is very sort of system-centered. Anyway, that's just another point, and that's why offering many choices within the public school realm is an important driver of improvement. Anyway, another question. We have time for a couple more. The fellow in the purple shirt there, to your left, Allison.
Couple of comments. First of all, people with the highest fitness level perform 45% better academically than those with the lowest fitness level in students. That's just a comment. Well, the question I have is, what happens to the administrative costs in the charter system schools? One of the big growth areas in education has been administrative costs and keeping out of the classroom. What happens to those costs in the charter system?
That is, so just so you know, in Spokane, we're really working on that in terms of really narrowing being able to operate a large system, things like payroll, but making sure we don't have lots of layers and layers. And so we've really worked on streamlining administrative costs. In terms of charter schools, you do have a lot of different models out there. Some are, again, if they can work with another school district as a partner, that helps. And so a lot of times, instead of a principal, you may see a lead teacher. That's a pretty popular model that you see. Also, you don't have, because it's small, you don't have quite the levels and layers as well. And so you do have, I would say, fewer. And to be efficient, you have to do that. You can't have all these separate costs. But again, working with another entity really helps make you successful.
So I would just add that this is a major area of concern because the initiative didn't foresee the startup costs in the envisioning of that piece of legislation. And so we are asking our applicants to front end a lot of the work that has to happen around the hiring and the facilities and the purchasing of materials, and because the state doesn't transfer dollars to them because it's based on per pupil enrollment until they actually have students. So startup costs right now are probably one of the biggest things that our applicants are dealing with, and there's a good bit of fundraising going on in the state in order to sit underneath those applicants with experience to really say, by community, we want you here. But I think in this first couple of years, you just nailed probably the biggest issue.
And one important feature of the charter school law is that the charter schools themselves only pay 4% of their operating income to their authorizer for that oversight, and can control the other 96% of the actual dollars in their budgets. I mean, once we get past the startup costs, the charter schools will be able to make decisions about how to allocate their spending and establish their who works, how many teachers they have in the school, how many support staff they have in the school, how they decide their personnel. So that's quite a difference between what is happening in the traditional public schools. Okay, I think one more question and I think we'll be finished. How about you here, sir? Yellow in the green shirt. That's great. That's great. Guys.
We currently have 4 of our grandchildren in charter school in Nevada. Not Nevada, Arizona. Sorry about that.
In Arizona. That's great.
Got too many grandkids, I guess. But in the event, the 3 things have stood out in my mind, and like your comments on them. First of all, the curriculum itself seems to be much higher expectation. They're more of a classic type of formula where they read Beowulf and they speak Latin and Greek and these kinds of.
Is it Great Hearts? It sounds like.
I think it's Scottsdale something.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a private school or a charter school in Scottsdale.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that stands out in my mind is accountability. The kids don't have to go there, so they have to perform to stay there. Is that common? And the third thing is the family involvement, where the families, if they're going to let their kids go to the charter schools, have to become involved in various ways within the education system itself.
So I think the parent engagement strategies for these charters is probably the piece I'm personally most excited about. So every charter organization or individual charter school handles it differently, but what we are starting to see as common practice are these parent contracts that basically, as a parent, you say, here's my personal commitment to making sure I hold my student to high expectations, to staying involved in their coursework, to coming to the parent-teacher meetings, to sort of, in each school system structures this based on their own school philosophy and the culture of high expectations that they're trying to create. But because you choose to go to a charter and you go stand in line and you become a part of an additional process, even though it's a lottery system, you have to admit on the front end that there is some sort of selection here, and that the parents are saying, I want to do more for my student, and my student is saying, I want to be in a school environment that's going to require more of me. So there is that piece of this that makes it unique from the traditional system. But we are finding very much common practice now that there is a real intentional, meaningful relationship that starts to happen between the school, the parent, and the student that is paying real dividends.
I'm just so glad you brought up Arizona, because they have some wonderful things going on as well. There's a program there, and that's why I said Great Hearts, that has more of that classical education, and it's really, their results are amazing in terms of parental involvement and then, and raising the bar. And what we find is students and parents will, if you said it, they want the best for their students, and they will meet the time commitment and the hours, et cetera. So yes, wonderful things going on. And again, it's a good model then when you have these schools in your system for the rest of the schools to learn from and to aspire to.
Excellent. Oh, well, okay. Well, I think that was a tremendous presentation. I thank you so much for what you've told us and informed us about. It is so exciting to be part of this new, burgeoning, innovative school model for Washington State. It can only do good things for our students. Before we close, I want to thank our co-presenter of our session, the Walla Walla Chamber of Commerce, and Damien Sinat, who is here today. And I want to remind you, Dan is going to say something, but when you leave, please go out through those back doors. I've been asked to tell you that 3 times. Make sure you go that way. And then please be sure to thank our wonderful speakers who came, great distances to speak to you today. Thank you.
Well, that was a great panel. So join me again in thanking Leave and those 2 panelists. They did a great, very informative.